Hey guys. The day after I published last week's video, I was chilling on my couch, catching up on episodes of The Expanse, while simultaneously reading Reddit on my phone in complete violation of my pact with myself to lower my dopamine-seeking behavior, when I came across a fascinating Twitter conversation which was posted on Reddit. It's a dialogue written by a trans man who has been struggling to adjust to how life is for the average man. The uniqueness of his vantage point is, of course, that he spent the first 20-something years of his life as a woman before transitioning. So he knows what life is like for a woman from personal experience, something most of us guys have no frame of reference for. And I've long been an advocate of being sensitive and open about the struggles of women, rather than being judgmental. So this video is going to be different because I want to take a moment to validate just how tough life can be for men as well. So I'm going to share and discuss this man's insights into being a man in the USA. As always, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you've been enjoying my content. Let's get started by reading what Twitter user Scoldish says. I'm pretty quiet about the fact I'm a trans man usually, but holy shit, I need to tell you about the culture shock I'm going through because it's blindsiding me. There's a huge sense of social isolation that comes with being perceived as male, because now people are subconsciously treating me as a potential predator. All strangers, no matter their gender, keep their guard up around me. It made me realize that there is no inherent camaraderie in male socialization as there is in female socialization, unless, of course, it's in very specific environments. And the fact I don't ambiently experience this mutual kinship in basic exchanges anymore is an insanely lonely feeling. You know how badly this would have fucked up my mind if I had grown up with this? It's 4:30 a.m. and I'm mourning the loss of a privilege I didn't even know I had. Anyway, I'm going to figure out how to navigate this. Don't know how yet, but I'm gonna. Okay, so then a bit later, after some conversation with others, he says, frankly, this is something I would have never understood without living the experience. It's not blatantly clear to me that most cis men probably experience chronic emotional malnutrition. They're deprived of social connection just enough for it to seriously fuck with their psyches, but not enough for them to realize that it's happening and what's causing it. It's like they're starving, but don't know this because they've always been served 3 meals, except those meals have never been big enough. This deprivation comes from all sides of the aisle, by the way. In the case of women, when I'm out in public and interact with women, all of them come off as incredibly aloof, cold, and mirthless. I've never experienced this before, even though I know exactly what this composure is. The armor that keeps away creepy-ass men. As someone who used to wear it myself, I know this armor is 100% impersonal. Nobody likes wearing it. And I can say with absolute certainty that women would dump the armor in favor of unconditional companionship with men if doing this didn't run risk of actual assault. Trust me when I say women aren't just being needlessly guarded. But I only have a complete understanding of this context because I've experienced female socialization. If I hadn't, I would have thought this coldness was a conspiracy against me devised by roughly half of the human population. Even now, with all that I know about navigating the world as a woman, I'm failing to convince my monkey brain that this armor isn't social rejection. And as for male socialization, again, it seems taboo for a man to be platonically intimate with men for reasons I've yet to fully understand. But I think it boils down to A, the fact that society teaches boys that it's not okay to be soft with each other, and B, garden variety homophobia. Our media only shows men being intimate with one another when they're teamed up against dire situation. And I'd bet real money it's a huge reason why men gravitate toward activities that simulate being teamed up against an opposing force. By the way, this is something I agree with completely, but I can talk about that another day. But men are not machines of war. Yes, testosterone absolutely gives you dumb bastard brain, but that just makes you want to skateboard a wagon down a hill or duct tape your friend to the wall, not kill someone. The human species looks so much colder standing from this side. I can see how men might convince themselves that their feelings of emotional desperation is personal weakness, as opposed to a symptom they're all experiencing from white imperialism. Because this human connection This frith is as essential for our well-being as water is. So sick. How sick? I want to destroy this garbage. I hope that this hits some of you right in the feels, as it did for me when I read this. My whole life as a man, I've been aware of feeling alone. I mean, I have friends, I have family, but there's always a sense of being an island for me, a sense of emotional isolation. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this feeling. And this is serious. This shouldn't just be an, oh, shucks, us poor guys. And it shouldn't be a, oh, how sad for men, but us women face getting assaulted by men issue. This is real and shouldn't be pushed aside, and it's pernicious in ways that aren't even immediately obvious. For starters, let's talk about men's health for a minute. Think about how obvious it is to us all that smokers will most likely die early. It's common sense today, and over decades, many people have dedicated their lives to creating public awareness of this fact. But research clearly shows that loneliness is directly linked to early mortality. In fact, at levels that are eerily similar to regular smokers. In short, being lonely is as bad for your health as being a smoker. And we aren't just talking about literal loneliness. You know, for example, if you're in a new city and don't have any friends yet, we're talking about feeling lonely. So you could be surrounded by friends, but if you still feel emotionally alone, then this health-damaging effect still applies. And do you know what other impacts emotional isolation has? It exaggerates extreme behavior. The violence, assaults, both physical and sexual, high school shootings, in fact, many of the more extreme aspects of male behavior that are so often blamed on toxic masculinity are in fact side effects we should expect when half the population is suffering from chronic loneliness and emotional isolation. I'm making this video because this is something I care deeply about. This is 100% aligned with my life purpose as a man. I feel like this is one of the major root causes of so much suffering for us guys. And I'm not blaming women here. Men and women in all this, we're a part of a dynamic system. We used to live in smaller tribes, but the only way for small tribes to survive was to ensure they didn't get attacked by other tribes nearby. So the men had to become more war ready, more fighting capable and ready for violence. So we as men had to suppress our emotions for the greater good. We had to become harder and less emotional. If we didn't do this, we got subsumed by societies who did. This is why I hate that women blame men for the patriarchy, since it was a decision men and women had to make in early societies in order to survive. And that decision kept us alive back then, but hurts both genders today. But I don't want to get off track here. The point is that we have a feedback loop, which the Twitter poster points out. Women get cold and aloof and avoidant of men to self-protect from the dangerous men that do exist. But that in turn creates men who feel emotionally isolated and rejected. Some of those men go on to become dangerous, which again reinforces women's coldness. And this is our predicament. We as men can't control women, and nor should we try. But we can take responsibility for ourselves and our own well-being. We need emotional intimacy amongst ourselves. We need to push other men to be okay with emotional intimacy. I don't buy into this idea that women are more emotional than men. Sure, women have a hormonal cycle that causes more emotional fluctuation than you'd expect in men, but we have just as many emotional needs as women do. I know, because I've learned that I do, and I'm a man. The first time in my life that I felt emotional intimacy was when I did a men's work course at the age of 23. It involved a group of men coming together every week for 7 weeks. And in this group, we'd learn to get present together, like super present with every other man. We'd stare silently into the eyes of the other man, just feeling what he was feeling behind those eyes. We'd begin to share what was going on in our lives from a very vulnerable space. We'd talk about our mothers and our fathers and our exes, all the pains we'd felt but had never really talked about with anyone, save perhaps a therapist if we were lucky. I felt truly heard for the first time in my life, and those men didn't just hug me and say, "It's all okay, dude, you'll be fine." They not only made me feel heard, but they pushed me to grow, to have compassion for myself and for others. I grew a lot as a man in those 7 weeks. If I hadn't have experienced those 7 weeks, I would still be angry at women for hurting me. I'd still be angry with my parents. I'd still feel like I'd never had anyone to hear and understand me. And Most importantly, I never would have become a men's coach, so you wouldn't be hearing me speak today. I continued to meet with these men every month for another 6 months. Then the group faded and I was once again alone. Alone unless I had a great girlfriend by my side, which I was lucky enough to have most of the time. But the companionship of one woman, one person, cannot be enough for us men. We need male intimacy too. We cannot and should not expect one singular woman to be able to take care of all of our emotional needs. That's unreasonable and leads to many marriage and relationships falling apart. I recently created a live-in retreat event where I take a group of men through this journey of digging into the deepest parts of themselves and get to be seen and pushed to greatness by the other men, providing the incredibly powerful form of camaraderie that most other men never get. But that can't help many of you watching because it takes place in Sydney, Australia. Unfortunately, there aren't nearly enough of these kinds of hubs for men in the world. But start somewhere. Good men's groups are hard to find, but they aren't that hard to create. Do some Google searches for men's groups in your city. Post in some Facebook groups. Reach out. Say, hey, I'm looking for men to connect with on a regular basis and talk through some shit together. Maybe be more eloquent than I am about it here, of course, but you get the idea. But just don't accept being lonely and emotionally isolated. There's so much more to life than what us men accept. Unless you do, you're only getting 30% of what life can offer. I made today's video because I wanted to reach out to you all and let you know that you aren't alone. All of us men crave to be seen and heard and connect with other men, but we aren't given the social acceptance or the language to begin to express this need with each other. I want you to talk up in the comments below. I want you not to be willing to accept a lack of connection to others in your life. You were told repeatedly that this is what it means to be a man, but that was a lie. There is nothing intrinsically masculine about being a loner. The lone cowboy is a dangerous form of idealized masculinism. And sure, he may have been masculine in a fashion, but not because he was alone. And so I'll end my rant on this note. It wasn't our fault that we were born into a society we were born into. It wasn't women's fault they were born into it either. They're reacting to their environments the same way we are. We can take responsibility to create change, first for ourselves, then for other men, and then eventually for women and society at large. But it starts with a single selfish act of asking, or preferably demanding, more emotional intimacy from your friends, or finding friends who will provide that for you. You don't just deserve it, you need it more than you probably know. You only get this one life. You gotta do it right. Until next week, men, take care, and I hope to see you in future videos.